Hello, happy people. For years and years and years now, I've been waiting for the X-Men to come through the MCU because it's been a long time since we actually had an X-Men movie on screen and a long time since Disney Marvel bought the rights, or they essentially bought out 20th Century Fox, so they finally had the X-Men back in their possession. And fans have been waiting for this for years. And each time a Comic-Con or a D23 rolls around, they expect an announcement for an X-Men movie, but for years, it's been nothing, and there's been little teases here and there in the MCU, like for example, Miss Marvel, who was originally supposed to be an Inhuman back when Disney didn't have the rights to the X-Men, was remade a mutant, and that was the very first reference to mutants in the MCU.
Kamala, there's something different in your genes, like a mutation.
But so far, nothing's come of it. There was also a little mention in the She-Hulk show of when are the X-Men coming to the MCU?
When are we getting the X-Men?
I cannot tell you that.
But also that resulted in nothing. And even this year there were rumors that one of the movies on the release date for the MCU was going to be an Avengers vs. X-Men movie, but still nothing. There's been so many characters and so many projects coming out for the MCU and Marvel in general, and so many obscure characters used, but we don't have any X-Men characters, and we don't really have any mutant characters besides Miss Marvel, who has recently remade a mutant. What little we have got from the X-Men at all as these years have passed by have been stuff going back to the Fox universe, like with Photon and the post-credit scene of the Marvels winding up in the Fox universe and meeting the original version of Beast, or with Deadpool and Wolverine being a big homage to the Fox universe and bringing back either castings from that universe that were supposed to be dead and gone, or things that never really even got off the ground. So it's still going back to the Fox universe. And Kevin Feige, in recent interviews, in fact, has made it sound like there's absolutely no plans to recast Wolverine in the foreseeable future. That's not even on his radar. And that was really surprising to me because I, as a fan, thought it was obvious. Once Disney gets the rights to the X-Men, as soon as those original contracts expire, why wouldn't they want to deep dive into those characters? There's a little gold mine in there of characters just waiting to be used. After we had 3 people in the span of 8 years playing Spider-Man, why wouldn't they want to recast Wolverine, especially when the comic accurate Wolverine is going to be very different than Hugh Jackman? That seems very obvious. So I had this question for a while, and after another round of Comic-Cons and D23s came around with hopeful X-Men fans wondering, where are the X-Men? Are we going to get announcements for them? And getting nothing, I wanted to explore this a little further. Now, first of all, one of the ideas that's been going around, and I had this idea, is maybe they don't want to introduce the X-Men right now because they already tried to introduce a lot of new characters that didn't work out. For example, She-Hulk was a very popular fan favorite character from the comics, and her show was absolutely panned and chastised as one of the worst Marvel projects ever. Moon Knight, on the other hand, while I really like Oscar Isaac in the role, it just did not pick up. It just did not pick up a lot of fandom for that character. Ever since Endgame ended, there hasn't been a big hit character. In fact, some of their resources on these characters and the potential of them, I believe, have been wasted. So people have been wondering that. Is it because that Disney Marvel knows that they have a big property here with the X-Men, and they have been having a run of bad movies and bad shows with Marvel, so they don't want to waste that property? They don't want to risk putting them out until they're convinced that they can get solid footing again. That is a fair way to look at it, because what we do see from Marvel's announcement is that they have less projects in the works than ever. They have a lot of projects that have just been in the can for a while, like Agatha All Along or Thunderbolts, and there's very little that I think is actually going to work though. Like Daredevil Born Again might work, but for the most part, these are films and shows that they just have to get out of the way, that are sort of going along with the kind of MCU projects that haven't been working, and so they just want to go all in on these Avengers movies and make sure those are successful. That seems to be where they're at right now. And once again, that could be true, because an X-Men movie will do better if either A, the MCU is doing better, or B, as a fallback plan, if the Avengers somehow does not work out, and that will just be a complete disaster beyond recognition if the Avengers cannot revive this universe. But still, you see that they didn't have a problem going forward with doing a Fantastic Four movie that's been in the works for a while and is now filming as we speak, and we're getting set photos from it. And Fantastic Four were also owned by Fox. So they're clearly not completely against introducing new characters into this universe, and they are starting to use Fox characters as well. So what's the deal with this? Now, they finally hired a writer to do the X-Men, but that doesn't mean anything because there have been writers hired from DC, for example, to do a Zatanna movie or a Joker and Harley movie. Scripts were written for those films, but they never got made, and I don't think they ever had any intention to get made. This is just par for the course with studios putting things in development for them to think about, but it doesn't mean that any actual serious work is being done on these projects. So as the Fantastic Four come out, and we've got Avengers movies coming out, and we recently just had a Marvel movie come out that is a callback to the Fox universe, you might want to wonder, why are they so hesitant to just recast younger versions of these characters in a fresh universe to go forward with the MCU? Like, I was really frustrated with Deadpool and Wolverine because I've been wanting to move away from the Fox universe for so long and get new castings of these characters because Hugh Jackman has had his run as Wolverine and had his perfect send-off. I'm wondering, why do we keep going back to this universe that I thought was done in 2019? But the more I looked into it, the more I discovered it might not be that Marvel is just continuously doing nostalgic cash grabs when it comes to the X-Men and those kinds of characters with the Fox universe. It might be that they have no choice. They're not able to use the X-Men. And as I looked into it, this is what I found, that it is a contract issue, and this has been going around for a while now, but it seems that the contracts for the X-Men in the Fox universe are a bit more binding than I thought. Originally, what we were hearing from Kevin Feige is that even though they bought the rights to the X-Men finally, is that we would not see them for a very, very long time. He made it seem like it was going to be in the very, very distant future, like years from now, and that's how he's still talking about them in terms of recasting Wolverine in that recent interview. But after he did that interview, a lot of leaks came out from different sites and different sources saying that the issue had to do with contracts with Fox. And I originally thought that the contracts were a lot shorter, but apparently, according to these rumors, there was a contract all the way up until 2025 with the actors of the Fox universe for the X-Men that says that they are not allowed to recast younger versions of these characters, recast them at all, until the contracts expire. And once again, the year that was thrown out was 2025. But according to these rumors, these are just rumors. And while it's very prominent that the idea of these contracts being in place is what is keeping the MCU from doing the X-Men, there is no specific date in that we know for sure. Like, the date that's been thrown out is 2025, but it could be longer than that. We don't know for sure. These are just rumors. But I was wondering, like, why is there such long contracts on these characters, and why is the Fantastic Four able to be used but the X-Men characters are not? And what I discovered, at least from these leaks, is that when they made Dark Phoenix in 2019, Dark Phoenix ruins all. Nothing good came from that movie. They had to renew all of the contracts of the actors in order to make that film. And that is why they've been extended so long. Because there hasn't been a Fantastic Four movie since 2015, but there was a X-Men movie with Dark Phoenix in 2019, and then the New Mutants movie came out. So it's far more recent in terms of having Fox-produced X-Men content, and that is why they're not allowed to recast those characters and produce films from them. And when it comes to Fantastic Four, just going back based on these leaks and what people have been saying, two things seem to be the case. Either A, that since there hasn't been a Fantastic Four movie in a very long time, that maybe the contracts expired sooner. But the other idea, and this is something that's just been floating around in terms of speculation, is that maybe the way that Marvel is able to do Fantastic Four so soon is they're doing technically alternate universe versions. Like John Krasinski, Reed Richards was an alternate universe version. And so once again, there's no facts to back this up. This is merely speculation that maybe there was a caveat in the contracts that they can technically do alternate versions of these characters. That would explain why Marvel chose the direction they did with the Fantastic Four in terms of being from an alternate universe and coming into the new one. I am not sure of the validity of that at all, or if it even makes sense, but I wanted to throw it out there. But needless to say, it seems as though the Fantastic Four and their position with the rights from Disney Marvel are just in a different place than the X-Men. And that started to make a lot more sense for me, because up to this point, I thought that the Fox contracts would have had to expire at this point, but apparently that is not the case. And that's why we're still getting movies even 5 or 4 years after the Fox universe ended, like Deadpool and Wolverine, that are still paying homage to the Fox universe, because if they want to use any X-Men characters at all, they have to keep adhering to that universe and the castings that were already made for that universe. So Kevin Feige isn't that he's just dragging his feet on recasting Wolverine and can't see anybody other than Hugh Jackman doing the role. He says that Hugh Jackman is gonna play Wolverine till he's 90, presumably because he can't cast anybody else in the role, even if he wanted to at this point. It's just not possible. I was disappointed because as much as I love Hugh Jackman, I've been wanting to get a new take on the character for so long, but apparently that just isn't possible right now until whenever those contracts expire. And this is, on the one hand, a little bit disappointing to me, but a good thing on the other hand, because here's the thing. I've been wanting to move away from the Fox universe of the X-Men for so long. It started all the way back in 2000, and I rewatched that X-Men movie from 2000 very recently. And it's not great, honestly. Like Hugh Jackman, once again, great casting as Wolverine. And there's a lot of great castings in those movies, from James Marsden as Cyclops really stands out, or Halle Berry as Storm. The problem is the writing and the direction lets these characters down. Apart from Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, who's really likable, and Patrick Stewart as Professor Xavier, James Marsden's Cyclops is just made into a one-dimensional, serious, unlikable character, completely against the dynamic character that Cyclops is in the comics, and just there to be a rival for Wolverine, the other guy, you know? Halle Berry might be perfect casting for Storm, but she wasn't given anything as a character. Anna Paquin, I contend, was great casting for Rogue, but she was made into a very subdued, quiet character who is nothing like the Rogue in the comics. And this was a pattern with the Fox universe as a whole, is that they would have great castings for a lot of these characters, but they would give them bad direction. And honestly, I don't even think the Fox universe has many great movies in them at all. Like, Days of Future Past was the highest grossing Fox X-Men movie, but even looking back at that movie, even though it has some things I like about it, it still does not hold a candle to some of the greatest MCU films or greatest superhero films in general. I don't think it really holds up. I don't think that the Fox universe as it started or as it continued even holds much of a place in people's hearts like, say, the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy does, and how that really hold up. The Fox universes, the early X-Men ones, were experiments for superhero films, and they were afraid to embrace their source material, and they were very different. And they, in effect, let down their source material. Stories like The Dark Phoenix, that were like the best, one of the best X-Men stories of all time, was changed on a fundamental level for these movies. In the comics, it's that Jean Grey gets possessed by an alien entity, the Phoenix Force, and that it's ultimately in the Dark Phoenix, because of her humanity, she chooses to kill the creature inside of her and kill herself to save everybody, because she was ultimately a good person. But the movies turn that on its head and make it that the Dark Phoenix is the dark part of Jean Grey that is suppressed, and that completely ruins the story. And they did it twice, and that's the big thing, is that they ruined their initial Fox universe with X-Men The Last Stand. They gave themselves a second chance with a reboot with Days of Future Past, and then they went forward and made the same mistakes over again, casting characters like Jean Grey and Cyclops to be ultra one-dimensional and serious, telling the Dark Phoenix story again and doing it in the same way that they did in The Last Stand, with the same fundamental changes and mistakes to the story. The Fox universe changed and butchered so many great X-Men storylines and comics and characters on the one hand, but on the other hand, there were so many characters that just did not get any focus at all. If you weren't Wolverine or Charles Xavier or Magneto in the Fox universe, then you weren't a character who was going to be very well developed or fleshed out at all. But they kept making these movies because Fox wanted to keep the rights for so long, and it was like a holding pattern for these characters for so many years, where they just did not get their just dues because they were trapped in this universe from Fox that did not want to be accurate to the comics and did not do right by these characters except for Wolverine. And we finally got our great send-off for Wolverine, and it was great for ending for his character, and we were ready to move on, and the Dark Phoenix was done, and now we're still tethered to the Fox universe. And as a fan, that's really frustrating to me, because I've wanted to see these characters done right, because the X-Men aren't even in the cultural zeitgeist that much. Like, people don't know how great these characters are. They don't know how popular these characters could be. These characters could be more popular than the Avengers if you did them by their correct versions from the comics and adapted these storylines correctly. The X-Men, before the Avengers, the X-Men were the A-listers of comics. comics, and the Avengers were the C and B listers, and there was a reason for that. But on the other hand, this might be a good thing, because if this prevents Marvel from using the X-Men while they're in this sort of limbo right now, where they don't know if they're going to be able to move forward in a successful manner, then that's good that the X-Men cannot be used, because after 20 years of misuse, you have to get them right in the MCU. We have one chance for that to get good X-Men portrayals, good portrayals of this team after 30 years, and it should not be squandered. I'm glad that they weren't able to be used in the past 5 or 6 years, because it means that they probably would have been a part of this squandered universe with squandered characters like She-Hulk or Moon Knight that just were not used or introduced correctly. And it means that in this time where Marvel is trying to get back on its feet, and there's a big question mark if Fantastic Four can do well and if the Avengers can do well and all of that, it means that they have enough time to learn from their mistakes and to really work on a script and really have a plan for how they're going to use these characters going forward and not make things rushed out like so many other MCU projects. So that is the explanation for why there is not an X-Men movie officially in the works right now, why we don't have any announcement on projects even though it seems obvious that they should do it, and why Kevin Feige always makes it sound like he's either unwilling or hesitant to recast these characters. It's because right now he really can't, but I'm willing to wait in order to get actual good versions of these characters. So what do you think about the X-Men being introduced to the MCU? And if you are a fan of these characters in the comics, I hope you understand as I do how much potential these characters have. Let me know what you think about this video in the comments below. Thank you, patrons, as always, for supporting this channel. If you want to support the channel, check out the Patreon link in the description, and I will see you guys next time.